Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of The Void in association with LinQ Sports. Link, share, play. On today's show, Darius Knight, Gareth Herbert, Darren Blake, Ryan Jenkins, Terence Young, and yours truly, Sky Andrew. Today, we're discussing Chinese dominance in table tennis. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Can people compete? And what is it about China that makes them so strong? Not just the numbers, as my great friend Darren Blake would say. 2 billion people, mate. 2 billion people, mate. Is it to do with the training method, the psychology? Well, let's go on to a question from the public. Do you think that Ma Long and other members of the Chinese team would have been world champions if they had been brought up in England? That's a good one. Gareth Herbert, let's get to you. Would Ma Long and Fan be world champions if, and by Fan I mean Fan Zhendong, would they be world champions if they'd been nurtured in England?
No. No, I think if that was the case, that would suggest that having someone that's particularly talented could make it regardless where they're from and what resources they've got available. So I don't think that's the case. I know that we'll be discussing a lot of things tonight, but think about the technical things they do, the age they start, the discipline, all those things culturally work in China that I don't think would work in England. We wouldn't have the facilities and the knowledge to actually produce it. So if you look at, say, England, there are a number of really good coaches, but in China, it's a very small number. So in China, they've got loads and loads of good coaches, all sharing the same philosophy, working towards the same goals, and having the resources around them to allow them to be of that level. So I don't think any of us know of a club in England that would have the resources to allow Ma Long to be a world champion.
So Gary, do you think that our philosophy of second bounce on the white line was good then?
Yeah, I think it would need a bit more than that. I think there's a bit more to it than producing a world champion and how short your service.
Ryan Jenkins, what's your view?
I think no. I think the importance China holds to table tennis is unique. It's quite an autocratic sort of democracy there, and yeah, I mean North Korea is pretty fixed as well, but they haven't got world champions, so it is the culture, the importance of table tennis there, just the same as importance of football here. China would love to have footballers like we've got here because the importance on the game, the money in the game, the knowledge of coaching, the amount of players in the structure, and that's the same with table tennis in China. So the importance is everything, really, and that's why they are who they are.
Darren Blake, what would stop a talent similar to Ma Long or Fan Zhendong being world champions and being developed in England?
Similar to what the guys have said, really. It's such a different sport in the UK, table tennis, so there's just not that level of focus, there's not that level of infrastructure. The way someone like Ma Long would have been brought up, the amount of balls he would have hit through his life, the level of play he would have been playing against from a young age, the tournaments, the expectations, and just the level of focus and competition he'd have all the way through. In the UK, imagine if he had been at his level growing up, he'd be so far ahead straight away, wouldn't he? So you just wouldn't have that drive, that infrastructure, a bit like the guys say. The level of training really to get to that level, and like Ryan said, it's similar to our thing in football. In China, it's just such a focused sport, and such a number of players playing. The competition is just so much higher. The infrastructure's there.
Terry Young, what would stop a Ma Long developing in this country?
It's a difficult one. I think Ma Long, I think we all probably agree that he's up there, obviously, with probably Volden and maybe one or two others, the greatest table tennis player who's ever lived. Would he have made it would he be world champion if he lived in England? Well, it depends on a few different things. I think there's a chance that he possibly could be. At the end of the day, he's clearly got the mindset for being a world champion. He can take the pressure, but again, like what the guy said, when you live in China, and I've lived in China for long periods of time, 3 months being the longest, they have a different, they have a military approach to it. And yeah, it's very difficult to do that over here because we're just a completely different culture. I think if he was involved with the right people over here and training, it's still possible that he could become world champion. Because he's clearly got enough talent, but there's so many other distractions that others like myself and Gareth and Darius faced when they were here. If he could keep away from that and focus just on the game and table tennis, then it's a possibility. There is obviously a chance that he could still have been world champion, but it's a lot less likely.
Talking about Darius Knight, you was one of the best in the world at your age group, cadets, juniors, you and Paul Drinkle. So what would stop Ma Long from being a similar standard to you on and then going on to become world number one?
Well, I think obviously it's about the vision of the coach and about your surroundings. You know, it's very difficult to sometimes, like I felt sometimes, push the level when, you know, didn't have some of the senior boys around. You know, if you look at some of the best nations, Germany, France, and Europe, they always, when you were good when you were young, you always had that senior level to push to, and someone be there and physically teach you the ways and teach you what to do and what not to do. So I think that's what I miss. But I mean, either way, you know, China, it's about the numbers, it's about the bodies, it's about, you know, when you go to China kind of thing, everywhere you go in China, the warm-up is the same. They have this kind of, you know, system or, you know, belief, or that you work for the country, you're representing your country at all times. You know, the budget for there is unlimited. You know, they've got national centers, they've got coaches among players, you know, they've got everything. So I think that obviously does help. But I mean, I think it's just like, you know, it is their number one sport. You compare it to, trying to think of what sport we're good in England. I mean, we're good at football on paper as in our league, but in terms of as a national team, you know, we don't quite do it. But I mean, I think it's just those factors, you know, like, you know, I think in China you have a son or a daughter, you want them to play tables because it's quite an honorable, smart, intelligent, you know, game that, you know, if you make it, it's like being a football player in England. But actually you make it and you get the, forget the money, but you get the results. You're guaranteed to some kind of a surety, you know, you're being looked after, you're in a national team, you've got the tournaments, there's a system how to be good. So every time you're putting 5 players into that system, it's quite easy to keep getting them there, you know. So I mean, I think that's probably one of the big things, that they work as a country. Everybody talks the same language. Therefore, in England, it's like one person says this, one person says that. There's no kind of hierarchy or just a system where we're all working. We all love tennis, but we're all working in one way to make the best plays. This is the best way to play a forehand. This is the best way to. This is the new technology in the game. So I think Terry spoke about it in the last episode of The Void, where, like, you know, the local coach is still better than our, I won't say national coach, but our regional coach, for example. Do you know what I mean? And just the numbers help as well.
So the competition seems to be coming from Japan. And I put it to Ryan Jenkins that it seems that Japan have the best opportunity of breaking the Chinese dominance. Japan have a player in Harimoto, which is only 17, and he's already number 4 in the world. So I put it to you, Ryan, why is dominance coming from Japan, and can they break the Chinese dominance?
I think there was a big shift. You know, Japan's got a rich history in table tennis. I think the 50s, 60s, that sort of era. And then obviously they've had a big shift and a big influx of youngsters. A big program rolled out a number of years ago. It's come to fruition.
What type of program?
Sorry, Sky?
What type of program are they rolling out to make them so good now?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the details. I just know that there is. I've read about it, but I don't know the extreme details of it. But I know that from that program of getting youngsters younger, technically better, working with them a lot younger, starting, which is something we're trying to do in archery, obviously, at the moment. So it's getting them younger to compete on a higher stage, younger, as Harimoto has done, Mimorito, a few others. Japan and Germany, probably before Japan, had a good crack at China. can Japan topple China? Maybe on a one-off match, it could happen, where three good players come together at the same time, catch China off on a bad day and beat them. Singapore done it with the Chinese women about 5, 6, 7 years ago. They beat them. But
they were Chinese, right, weren't they? Those women that play for Singapore are also Chinese born.
Yes, they are, and they moved over. But that's right. I mean, to do it continuously is tough now because China haven't lost a men's match since 2000. So we're talking 20 years. China men haven't lost a team match. So to do it, men, yeah.
Wow, I didn't realise it was a match.
Yeah.
Darren Blake, let's ask you why and if. Why is the main challenge coming from Japan? And can Japan beat or break the Chinese dominance?
I can't see them breaking the overall dominance, a bit like Ryan said, but I think you can obviously have individual players getting to number one in the world because we can see with Haramoto, he's got a good chance here. So I think you can definitely have them competing. I don't think you're ever going to get them to actually become dominant over China. I know we had the Swedes do it during that generation, which is a bit of a freak generation. So you never know for a small period of time. But I'd say constantly, China always going to be the strongest nation. Why they're doing better, I don't know the level of detail with Japan, but they've obviously got a strong infrastructure. There's a big focus on it. And the thing is, like any sport, once you get someone or a couple of players at the top, then more and more players follow that, if that makes sense. It's the same when Holland had it for a while at football, or Ajax at football. Once they became good for a number of years. Suddenly their model was the Ajax model. Everyone was following it for a bit, and I think that's what Japan are probably having at the moment. But I still think they're going to struggle to compete with them as a full nation.
Gareth Herbert, what's going on in Japan? Because Japan have developed Mima Ito, who splits the Chinese players. Chen Meng's number one, Mima Ito is number two. So for a player to get to that level within a period of Chinese dominance is quite good. We've spoken about Haramoto being number 4, but Mima Ito being number 2 in the world, I mean, that's quite a challenge. Well, what do you think, Gareth?
Yeah, I think China have created a template, haven't they, for everyone to follow? Yeah, so we can mimic what China do. And to a level, I think that's what Japan have done. Like the guys said, they starting younger. They're technically copying some of the things that China do. If you look at any of the videos, a lot of multi-ball. Yeah, so they're trying to go up there and do everything that China are doing. They're training 2 or 3 times a day. It used to be 2 times probably. Now they're training sometimes 3 times, like the Chinese do. So I think that helps. I think that the thing that separates them, I agree with the guys. I don't think they can topple China. Because for me, it's about knowledge. Yeah, so it's all right. We can all imitate China to a level where we're trying to do that in Archway, but to actually overtake and dominate, I think that's very difficult. I think someone like the Japanese guys and Haramoto's sister also very good, very good young player, but they're one-offs, and I think you always get individual players that can challenge the Chinese. So Timo Boll did it, for example. Waldner did it. Schlager became world champion, but none of their nations ever toppled China. It's almost like a short-lived result. So I think the only way, Singapore is a really good example as well. A lot of Chinese coaches. Coaching in Singapore, a lot of Chinese players. Yeah, so they've actually gone to another level of not just copying a template, but actually taking the knowledge out of China from the coaches as well. So they're trying, but I think China have just got it in masses. If you look at the coaches who coach the Chinese national team, they've all, most of them have been world champions, either singles or team world champions. So the knowledge that goes throughout that country from a staffing perspective is phenomenal. So I think
Terry Young, Gareth was just talking about the knowledge, but surely table tennis changes, and then the coaching methods have to go with the times. We've noticed that even the pen holders now, they're playing backhand topspins, and that's something that the coaches had to innovate. So what's your perspective, Terence, on whether
So when I first went to China, I was 13. It was 1991, 92. And the Chinese with the penhold, they were actually just starting. It was when Marv Wenger was around. They just started using the backhand as penalty. But it was over the last 25 years, it's developed massively. So they've really perfected it. And I think when the Chinese were dominating in the 80s and then all of a sudden Sweden came out, they had found a group of 5 or 6 guys that were able to change the game a little bit.
So that's what Japan need to do, is to find.
Yeah, but I think it was a different game. It was a completely different game. When China were playing back then, there was a lot of guys who were using short pimples, pen holders, and the Swedes were able to take a step back and slow the game down. And where the Chinese were so quick, Liang Zhiliang, for example, he was the best player at the time, I believe. Even he wasn't able to cope with the likes of Appelgren and Waldner, who were taking 2 meters away from the table and slow spinning deep, putting pressure on both wings.
So what do the Japanese need to do now to break that stranglehold?
Do you know, I think it's very difficult. Now, if you look at the top guys, Fan Zhendong, Ma Long, their shake hand grip, which is obviously more orthodox. I mean, you've got Zhu Jin, who's world class as well, but those Fan Zhendong and Ma Long, their shake hand grip, what can people do to get better than them? I think is very difficult.
But if you watch the 1989 World Final, Sweden beat China 5-0. China looked defeated. They looked battered. They looked like they couldn't win. Because the mindset was totally. Now that won't happen. You know, they're like animals again. They're like machines again.
There was probably also a mix between Sweden were the best generation ever of Europe, weren't they? And potentially China were one of the weakest, you know, and it was probably two things coming together at the same time.
Yeah, exactly that. But
well,
I think
they were looking outside the box.
The leadership has changed in China, and the refocus. Hang on, this is not happening. We're not allowing this to happen. After '93, I know there was a change in personnel, and they said we're not having this anymore, and we got to change. Youngsters got to come through and continually come through, not just 3 or 4 good players, and then what's next? And that's what's going to happen now. Marlon, the guys going to move on.
They've got all these players that, I mean, if we're being honest, you've got Marlon, Fan Zhendong, Zhu Jin. I apologise that I don't know all the other ones, but I've seen them. There was a tournament a couple of months ago. There's so many. They've probably got 10 or 20 players that they could put in, and they would all have a chance of winning the world. If you took Marlon, Fan Zhendong out, and Zhu Jin, I reckon the next group of guys would still have a great chance of winning the world championship.
What's your view?
Sorry?
Can Japan break the stranglehold of the Chinese?
No. One off. They can do it one off, but I don't think they can do it consistently.
Thank
think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Darius.
I think what would be interesting is that having I think they've done it a few times for Asia against the world, and really just selecting the best things. I think with someone like Harimoto, he's so young, it's just unbelievable what he's doing. But I mean, like I said, I think I made a comment on Facebook is that, you can't keep comparing generations, but what you have to admire is that the technology of the bats have improved. So the physical development of the player doesn't have to be, so big, I mean, in my time, you would never, ever get a 14-year-old competing at top 10 in the world. It's just not possible. When I was 14, Timo, Schlager, even maybe Ma Wenger was playing, Kong Li Hui was still playing. All these, I could name, 40 guys that, I think, bloody hell, those 40 guys like that level is not quite there today. Because even the players that are top now, they're kind of young, but not because the game changed, because I think that just those top guys had such a long time, had such a long time in the system, where that middle-aged players, they just became a little bit extinct, a little bit, they just disappeared, because I do believe it's much harder before to be a top player than now. The world rankings was just brutal. If you got top 100 in the world, that was a sign of you being a top player. Now the top 100 in the world, it's a bit it's just like a business, I've got guys that I think if I trained for a month, I'd still beat them.
I mean, another void, Darius.
Sorry?
So that's another void. You reckoning you could beat players in the top 100 in the world after 3 months of training?
Yes, definitely, absolutely. I mean,
what was your highest ranking? World ranking.
Mine.
Yeah.
I stopped at about 200, about 220, 210. I stopped.
How can you beat players in the top 100 now if you've stopped at 220?
Okay, because for example, when I was playing, the guys I was playing with, you know, they were below me. So it's a bit like if I continue playing, obviously the guys that are now kind of like top 50, top 60, you know, I know where I was. I was beating these guys week in, week out in a league match. I was on the way
I know,
to
but I beat
player.
Robert Gardos and he's still beating them now.
I know.
Yeah, but he's an older player. I'm talking about.
It's untrue.
Regardless is not. Regardless is there. What I'm trying to say is that.
Darius, you need to start training again. Then, yeah, we're going to test that out.
Yeah, I've started to. But what I'm trying to say is, I give you a prime example. Ramgay played every tournament a couple of years ago and became top 120 in the world.
He did, yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that now the ranking list has changed, where it's not like, oh, if you beat this guy, you get this weighting. It's now just if you play more tournaments, a bit like the tennis thing. You get more ranking points. So, you know, you got a guy from Australia, not to be offensive, I do like him, Heming Hu. Because he's from Oceania, he plays a few of the major events. You know, he's 70, 60 in the world. You know, like, you know.
In other words,
that's another conversation.
In other words, you and Ramgay play doubles, you'd probably win the world.
No, come on. Let's not be stupid. What I'm trying to say, I'm just trying to give you an example of how the game has changed over the last 6 or 7 years.
What, the game or the ranking system?
Well, a bit of everything.
Do you know? I know this is.
Darius, you're trying to say the level's weaker now than it was before.
Yeah, I think the high level techniques is higher. That's because of the technology of the rubbers and just how people can physically train a bit more and just, you know, all those little things. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, the legends that I saw before, you know, maybe because I was playing now, or, you know, it's not quite as legendary as it is now. The new legends is coming as Patrick Francisco, you know, from Germany, where he's beating a few of the Chinese. And what I mean is it's a nude game. It's a bit like open for all, you know. And of course, Liam is a top player, he's a world-class player.
But, you know, Darius, you know, like Francisco, it's a good example, yeah. So when we were playing, let's say Timo Boll was number one, and let's just put Roscoe in there. I know it's a slightly different generation. We'd have people like Peter Franz and Vosic and people, not Vosic maybe, but certainly Peter Franz. He also beating a lot of the top players. So that would be the same as Francisco beating the top players. You know what I mean?
I'm bringing back to the focus of.
Sorry, go on.
I enjoyed that little bit of Ramgay, Darius training.
No, I'm just trying to give you like a fair, honest example. I mean, what I mean is that. One second. Let me just a disclaimer. Ramgay's had 20 top 100 wins. Don't get me wrong. What I mean is he's good, but what I mean is that now it's like, I remember like my first time being a tournament player, Thomas Caniff, he was like 60, 70 in the world. You know, I remember the guys that I was beating at my age group, you know, as 22, 23 year olds, Omar Assar. These guys are now like 30 in the world. What I'm trying to say is that I know if I continue playing, I can't say I would have been 30, but I know I would have been.
But that's the difference between if you continue playing it or if you just started now and train for 3 months and saying that you get.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. What I mean is I still got my height.
Darius, you fucking hilarious.
You got someone like Sam that's 70 in the world, 80 in the world, Paul that's 50, Liam that's, you know, top 20. What I'm trying to say is that, like, all the guys that were really good before that held into it for a long time, you know, is gone. It's a bit like this. He was so good for so long, kind of thing.
I reckon if I train for 3 months, I might make the top 100 of England.
No, Terry, I think you're better than that. But what I mean is obviously.
Darius is the lady loves milk tray. That's it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
So, what was the question? What was the question?
I've forgotten.
Now. What was the question?
The point of what we're talking about. So I want to, Darius, whilst you're online, let's ask you. So this is a difficult question, but I wanted to answer it honestly. Do you think that it'd be better for the game for the Chinese to drop their level and for other people to catch them up?
No, but it's a bit like saying, like, you know, in the 100-meter final, let's just take out all the black guys.
I'm saying, but they purposely drop the level. I'm saying, do we need another 9 scenario like what Darren Blake said? But the Chinese are not producing the great players, and the Europeans and other countries up their game, so that we've got more competition. Because what's interesting is that the top players, Marlon and Fan Zhendong and Zhu Jin, they're not wiping the floor with people. There are lots of European players giving them a good go.
Yeah,
for me, I think it would make the sport more exciting. I know what you're saying, Darius, about athletics. I think there's different characters in athletics for a start. People like Bolt, you'd follow anyway. The China, I think it would be more. I think it'd be more interesting for people if there was a mix and there was more countries, cultures competing. It would be like watching China. It would be for us watching China play Japan in the final of the World Cup every year. Football, as an example, yeah, you'd be much less interest watching it than if lots of different regions and countries have got a chance to win the World Cup. So I think it would definitely be more exciting for the sport. You'd follow, because you follow people in sport, don't you? It's no different to following your local football team. You know, you need
But
people to follow.
the Olympic Committee, weren't they looking at getting rid of table tennis because the Chinese dominance?
No, I
Don't
think
get me wrong. I don't think you should be holding them back. I'm not saying you should be holding them back. I'm saying
no. But
like what Darius just mentioned. Yeah, he said about Asia versus the rest of the world. Yeah, that type of thing would be exciting.
But you can't do what people watch when people watch the major events. The Olympics for table tennis is the biggest event. Any table tennis player wants to win the Olympic gold. You know, how do the ITTF give other countries the best chance to win? I think the rubbers make a difference.
No, but
I do, and it would be really.
I just think it would be better for the sport if the other countries could improve.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
I do think a Ryder Cup type thing, Asia versus the rest of the world, would, because look at America versus Europe in the Ryder Cup.
Everyone loves it. But can I say something, guys? In the Olympics, they already eliminated 2 people to play the singles for China. So already they've made some changes to make it.
Yeah, I don't think the individual. I don't think the individual side is still exciting because other people can win, can't they? I mean,
but they don't. When was the last time that?
I'll bring Ryan Jenkins in.
Into the final.
Ryan Jenkins. Want to bring Ryan Jenkins in and ask him this. There is a very fine line between winning and losing in table tennis. And the Chinese dominance isn't that, as I said before, they're not wiping the floor with everyone. They're not beating their rivals 4-0, 4-0, 4-0. I mean, it's some very tight matches. You know, even in the World Cup, Harimoto was 3-1 up against Marlon.
Great match.
So then I asked Ryan Jenkins, would it be good for table tennis if the Chinese weren't so good?
Yeah, it would be great for table tennis. As a neutral, yeah, definitely. If other people could win the team championships and the singles and the Olympics, and yeah, absolutely, it'd be great.
Jenkins, do you think that the rubbers make a difference for the Chinese?
Good point. It is a good point. And I haven't thought about it really, but yeah, it's a great point you make, that they're the only ones who use Hurricane or that type of rubber.
It's so much easier to touch.
Is it rubber, or is it cultural though? Like penhold, for example. Why does no other European country ever play penhold?
Knowledge.
Well, there is. There's a French guy now.
Yeah, but it's the knowledge. It's the knowledge of how to produce those players. But part of the reason, though, Sky, going back to what you said about they're not wiping the floor of everyone, it is partly because of the rule changes already. So up to 11, yeah. So if you play up to 21, they'll wipe the floor of everyone, and they don't need to wipe the floor on everyone. They're still beating everyone. They're still winning the World Championships, the World Cups. Yeah, so they are still dominant. It might not be 4-0 matches and 4-1s.
That's 100%, Harvey.
It is harder to wipe the floor with someone up to 11. It is obviously it's easy to lose sets and but yeah, you know, people will have a go at Marlon and beat them, but overall, the course of a season, they're winning the big stuff and they come back when it matters. You know, they might be down, they find a way through and they make sure then they win the big events.
Guys, you got to remember, we're saying when we say exciting, that's exciting for neutrals and Europeans, yeah. I mean, for the Chinese, they probably still love it. It's no different to baseball in America, you know. In reality, we don't follow it, but it's massive in America. But they're the only ones playing it, aren't they? You know. Yeah.
Gareth Herbert. Do we agree that table tennis at the top end is marginal gain?
Yeah. Yeah, it is, but that's the reason. That's one of the main reasons China are so good. The attention to detail. You know, Terry's talking about the rubbers, attention to detail, but actually it goes back to when they first started playing table tennis. You know, everything's such attention to detail, and actually what they do is actually quite basic. The ability to know how to do it is the difficult. So that knowledge is the difficult part. But what they do, if you look at the drills, for example, that a Chinese player from a young age to a professional player does compared to Europeans, European drills are complicated, really complicated. We're trying to do 2 points forehand to backhand block. You know, it's very, very, very straightforward. So I think for me, it's more about attention to detail. In Europe, we're very much jack of all trades, master of none. Whereas in China, they just master everything, every stroke, It's about mastery, and I think that template is for us all to follow. And I think we're silly not to. I think what I think could happen eventually is someone could take a real shot in the dark and say, right, if you're playing, I don't know, if you're playing 6 hours a day in China, we're going to play 8 hours, yeah, and we're gonna go and get 2 top Chinese coaches to lead a new philosophy. And it might be a 10 to 20-year plan to do it. But could they take that shot in the dark? If you're going to run 5 miles, we're going to run 10 miles. Just keep on doing more and more and more, and really push those boundaries. It's tough because
what else could happen is China, in the end, something like football could take over, yeah, as a national sport. And
it comes back to knowledge, doesn't it? And I think going back to what Sky said at the start about the number of people who play table tennis in China compared to the rest of the world, it's about 2 billion people in China.
Not, yeah.
But I think come back to knowledge. Do they have the knowledge to have the best football nation? I don't think they do.
No, what I mean is more people. Say table tennis just dropped in the country. That's the only chance you'd have where another sport took over, and less players. A bit like what happened with cricket for West Indies, like they started playing basketball and athletics, and you see the difference in their level compared to back in the day when they were.
So if they lose focus, if they lose that focus,
2 billion people who play table tennis, by the way.
Can't do that.
2 billion people in China, but
no, but I mean, the Chinese see table tennis as a game of art. They see it as a beautiful game. It's a courageous game. It's such honor, integrity, science, maths, chess, whatever you want to call it. It's their way of life. They work hard, they serve their country, they do the same warmth all over the place. They love it. I mean, if you have a son in China, you want him to play table tennis, because you're guaranteed.
Another thing, their nutrition. Their nutrition is a lot better in China. 100%.
That's not why they're good.
No, but it's everything. It's to do the whole it's the whole plan they've got. Team day in, day out.
I mean, they will do that with tennis players. They'll do that with athletes, but they're still not unbeatable at those sports. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I know, but
the top athletes at all levels are pretty strict. That's what I mean.
I think it's because of the history of the sport.
I'm like Terry, I live there. All I can say is that in terms of sport in there, sport is a way of life. They invest in the sport. Every place you go to in China, there is a national center or like a national local center of all sports. Track, field, whether they're good in it or not, they have it there because it's just a way of life. And therefore, it's a bit, I think in France, they have like loads of little regionals of the sport. So generally, it's very easy to produce something. Of course, in France, it's a little bit different because, they don't always have the best, but China have obviously the best coaches. They're happy to invest in something, even if they're not good at it. Even like track and field, they've got a few track and field athletes now. The football thing, they're doing it. Before, in 10 years' time, you'll see football, them just having a great national football team because they're putting investment. In England, we only have someone like a jack out of the hat because we've done it ourselves. Our mum and dad have been lucky enough to take us somewhere. If I'm trying to put your kid there, boom, up to you.
Do you not think, Darius? Like, I agree. Do you not agree? Like, the reason why if they became good at football, for example, I think it's almost what I was saying earlier on. They'd have to go and get that knowledge from elsewhere, wouldn't they?
Of course you do.
Because they have invested in football for quite a while now. So it has been gone, but haven't they? So they must have invested in it, but they're still not great. And that's what I was saying about the table tennis. If we were able to compete with China, then surely we'd have to go and get that knowledge and bring it back.
Yeah,
because we haven't got it.
But we've done it with Jais and it started to happen with us.
Yeah.
Then obviously it was happening. Then I lost a bit of track. Then Liam took the way and took it to another level because he had that in front of him. So it's a whole life.
Do you not think genetics have anything to do with it as well?
I was going to ask that.
Guys,
It's
the
genetics.
history,
I'm telling you,
it's the history of the sport, right? It's the history. You've got Brazil with football. You've got table tennis with China. You've got rugby with New Zealand.
Yeah.
You've got it's just the history. Japan with sumo wrestling, whatever. It's what they focus upon, and it's hard to break down.
Genetics
on that subject, we're going to move on.
Genetics could be.
Talk to you guys. I want to talk to you guys about where the threat's going to come from in terms of Europe. So we've got not just Europe and the world. So we've got Harimoto at 4, Calderano at 6 from Brazil, Falk from Sweden at 9, Bo, he's about 75 years old and he's still number 10. We got Niwa Koki from Japan, we've got Ocho Rob as well. So Terence Young, where do you see the threat coming from in terms of outside of China, individual players?
I think realistically, you've got you've got guys that can beat the Chinese occasionally. Any of those guys, Ocharov, Timo.
Pitch, you never mentioned over.
But I think realistically, the only people I can see having a consistent chance of beating them is someone like Harimoto. He's 17 at the moment.
Chinese or something, Harimoto.
Sorry?
One of his parents are Chinese, I think.
No, he's got two. He's got one Chinese. They were both top table tennis players.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? The knowledge is there.
Yeah. So I think as he grows older, his game is strange. I don't see how he's that good. looking at him, his game is very, very basic, but technique for me is poor compared to a lot of the other guys. But he's obviously, the knowledge is, like Gareth said, the knowledge is there, and he trains very, very hard. He's almost like a robot. He's like a robot. I think that there's a possibility that he can win some events.
You can't say a possibility. He's going. You can't say a possibility. He's going.
He'll win some events, but
I'm on about. He's 17.
There's a possibility he could win a World Championships or something like that. But what I'm saying,
I'd say.
Sorry.
Probability, you mean?
I don't think he'll win.
What you think he's more? But you think he's probable that he's going to win a World Championship?
How old is he?
17.
And what's his ranking?
4. But he was 4 in the world about 12 to 18 months ago. Don't forget.
No, he's 4 in the world now.
I know, but he was also 4 in the world about 12 to 18 months ago.
I think there's got to be a probability at his age, but interesting. Well, let's see.
Darren Blake, so where do you see the threat coming from? Harimoto, consensus of everyone's agreeing, from Japan. But what about from Europe or from Brazil? Calderona's an interesting guy, number 6 in the world, and he's from Brazil.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know that much about him, so the guys will probably be able to add a bit more on that. I mean, the Europeans, I think it's on their day, isn't it? It's on their day. Like Ocharov, he was number 1 in the world, wasn't he? Yeah. So on their day, and he had a period where he if he can get to number 1 in the world, he's obviously got a good chance to win. Pitch how he did get at the Qatar Open, if he can play like that and get to a final at 26, 27, he's still got a chance. But it is on the day more than consistently winning odds.
You need about 10,000 points.
You need a good draw, don't you? You need a good draw. You need to have a couple of really strong wins, and the draw goes right for you. You just never know, mate, on the day.
Where do you see the threat coming from? And we would all love to see Liam Pitchford win a major tournament. Can Liam Pitchford have a run at a tournament to win a major? Darius Knight.
Yeah, I think he can. Obviously, like, Liam's still playing, so I don't want to. I think it's unfair for me to say too much about him, because I think he's the only player that's beaten Ma Long and Xu Xing in the same year, both in 2 pro tours. I don't think I don't remember the last European that's done it. Maybe someone has done that. You know what I mean? But I think he just lost that to Zhang Fengdong 4-2. So I mean, I think Liam needs to win a major, whether it's a European top 10. A European Championships, which I think he's got all the abilities to do it. It's just, I think, it's just up to him. He's got another 10 years to get that. I think he needs to try and do it, quite soon. But I mean,
in the charge of the Europeans, where do you see Pitchford? Is he behind Rob? Is he behind Bowl? Is he leading?
Of course, he's behind Bowl, but I think they're not scared of Bowl. The Chinese. Bow's been there for 10 years in their faces, Bowl might beat one of them in a tournament, but he's not going to beat 2 or 3 of them. Therefore, I think Liam, I think they do fair him. I think he plays a very unorthodox backhand. His forehand is better than what it is. It's just Liam improve, believing that he can improve his game a bit more to become, whether he gets a bit more bulkier, to kind of like scare them as well. Like, sugar, this guy's not so easy. He looks like Peter Crouch, but he's solid, I think whether it's a bit more weight on his shots, I think he's got it, because I think he's got that unorthodox ability already. His backhand is, you couldn't make his backhand up. The guy does some crazy stuff. So I think he's got that unorthodox ability to be. And I think if he had a bit more solid, like the Dimmer Ovtcharov, is that because Dimmer's played 8 years of European Championships. He's won a European title. I think if Liam won that European title, which I think he needs, pardon?
Ocho won the World Cup title.
Yeah, but I think like a Pitchford, he kind of like needs that, and then I think when he goes at them again, oh, okay, you know, this guy's winning this, he's winning that, and he's taking us down. I think, you know, you're going to crap yourself a little bit. So I think Liam just needs those titles. I think if he had a few titles, a bit more, forget nationals like Paul, a bit more titles, you know, I think he's our only chance.
Gareth Herbert, let's get patriotic here. We're talking about who's going to lead the charge of the Europeans. We've got Brazilian in there as well. But what does Liam Pitchford need to do to lead that charge against the Chinese? Gareth Herbert. I'm not sure
if you can. Yeah, depends how we look at it. So in terms of leading a charge and having wins like against Zuzin, I think he's more than capable. I think he can have those one-off results. So I think for Liam, whilst I'm sure Liam is confident guy, I'm sure he's thinking about becoming a world number one. I'm sure of it. But for me, I think he can win a European Championship. Like Darius said, potentially European top 10. I would place him probably number 3 in Europe at the moment, behind Timo and Ocherov, and they can't go on forever. So I think he's got every chance of doing that. Yeah, I thought Timo Boll was going to retire about 5 years ago, but he just keeps on going. So never say never. But yeah, I just think Liam at the moment, the way he's playing, he's up there. And I think the difference is with the Euros, he may have to only beat 1 or 2 of them to win it. At the Worlds, he might have to beat 1 or 2 of them quite early on, and then beat 2 or 3 Chinese. So I think I'm not saying it's impossible, because I don't want to do that. You know, he's shown us it is possible to beat people like Zuzin, but that is a real challenge. I think, yeah. So I think for Liam, I'd like to see him win some titles. I think it's coming. I don't think we'll have to wait too long, but I think a European Championships or a European top 10, he will definitely win one of them before the end of his career. I'm sure.
Ryan Jenkins, does Liam Pitchford need to live in a place like China or Japan? He plays in the league in Japan, but does he almost need to be around his competitors? He's the people that he's competing against. Does he need to be around them? Does he need to live in China or live in Japan or something like that? Ryan Jenkins.
I don't think he does. I think he's in the right place now. He's playing the Japanese league. He's playing in the Russian club for Champions League. It's all about momentum. You know, I'm sure if any one of these guys had a bit of momentum in one tournament, and like I think it was Darren said, the draw opens up and they take their chances, then yeah, something could happen. Probably at the Olympics more than the Worlds.
Right. Olympics, bigger chance.
Ryan, for the draw to open up, what we're talking about is one of the big Chinese losing, aren't we?
Yeah, which can happen. You know, Kokiniwa could beat one, or you know, Calderano could beat one, and things open up that way, and then you know, things become a little bit more comfortable or realistic. So if Liam could have a great run, he can beat the Chinese, of course, as well. So we've seen that. There's no reason why he couldn't have a big run in one of these major tournaments, World or Olympic, depending on how things go. But that's what we're all hoping for. We want him to have that run he deserves and get to the latter stages. And you never know. You know, once you're in the mix, you're in the mix.
Earlier on, someone said something about the changes. It might have been Gareth that said the changes in the game has helped people compete with the Chinese. So is playing up to 11 better or worse for the Chinese? Ryan, what's your view?
I think it's worse. I think it was a good point that up to 11, there's more chance. Well, you know, we've all played up to 11. No, maybe Sky hasn't.
I did. Top 12.
Sky played to 51.
That's quality.
But if you have a bad start, obviously, then you're in trouble in a certain set. So, and once you drop a set,
though, Jenks, you said they haven't lost a team match since 2000. It can't be that much better. It might be.
No, it's not that much better. It's a little bit better. That's right.
But I mean, about it.
Who's it better for? The people competing against the Chinese, Ryan?
Sorry, Sky?
Is playing up to 11 better for the people trying to catch the Chinese?
Yeah, I think it is. But yeah, there's a good point again, Blakey. That's hasn't made a difference in the men's game, at least, and very little in the women's game. But the thing with the Chinese culture and mindset, they're very proactive rather than reactive. They see things forthcoming in the years to come, and they fill in those gaps rather than waiting for something to happen. You know, they're looking at new shots now. They're looking at new technology now. They're looking at how to cope with problems arising from different countries now. They've got a team of experts looking at different things connected to equipment and rule changes, and ITTF are trying to change rules and bring other innovations in to like the only have 2 Chinese in the Olympics, so there's not a full podium of Chinese players, which doesn't look good on photos and medal ceremonies. They're looking after, they're looking at these problems, and no doubt they're making things happen already now, ready for the future.
Terence Young, what's your view? Does playing up to 11 help or hinder the Chinese?
He's dropped off too.
It's gone missing, Terence.
Gareth Herbert, what's your view?
Sorry, I missed the question. Sorry, Sky.
We've spoken about different changes in table tennis, and what's interesting is playing up to 11. Does it help or hinder Chinese players?
It hinders the Chinese, for me, without a shadow. I think it's psychologically. If you're a top European player and you're playing the Chinese national team, you must think, you know what? I know this guy's good. It's going to be a real tough match, but for the next 25 minutes, if I just get this right, I've got a chance. So I think from a psychological perspective, there's much more belief there. If you're 5-3 up against Ma Long up to 11, you're thinking, well, hang on a sec, this is a good chance. Up to 21, psychologically you don't feel quite so positive. So I think that's the big rule change that evens things out a little bit, and it makes them not unstoppable. However, like the guys have said, they're still winning everything. The difference is they're 11-9s, 11-8s instead of 21-16s and 17s. So I think that's the difference. If you lose 11-8, it seems quite a tight match. Well, we used to play up to 21. It was 16 and 17. It was quite comfortable. So I think it definitely hinders the Chinese, and I think some of the rule changes in general have helped the Europeans. I think people are trying. So the service game for Chinese has always been quite strong. So the third ball's quite strong, but if you can use the arm, you can serve under the arm, the third ball's easier. So I think a lot of the rule changes has helped the rest of the world. But China, based on the reasons Ryan's just talked about, they still find a way to stay on top. They're always ahead of the game. And I think that's the big difference.
So, Darren Blake, are we saying that if the game was still up to 21, that the gulf of class would be even bigger between China and the rest of the world?
I'm not sure you could say it would be bigger, because they still are the best in the world and they still win everything. I think some of the games would look easier, for example, so there'd be even less upsets, I guess, on the individual matches. But I don't think it would necessarily make. It's a bit like tennis, isn't it? The games are closer when it's short games, but in the end, the sort of guys would still end up winning overall. So I think it's probably made it more exciting to watch a game, and like you say, it's 4-2, 4-3. You can win the games, but in the long term, it's still the results still seem to be coming out the same. Really, the Chinese are still.
Darius Knight. So they changed it up to 11. Darren Blake says that, I think Gareth Herbert says that it's slightly worse for the Chinese. But haven't the Chinese players just mastered the way to play up to 11 instead of 21?
No, but I think what you find out is that when I look back some of the old videos, all the Chinese had really good forehands, good serves, good forehands. Now they've learned to kind of like of a more durable style and learned to play backhands like us Europeans. So actually they've taken something back from us and thought, you know what, we're going to learn this, if not good, just as better. Like if you look at someone like Wanley Quinn, he couldn't play a backhand. He couldn't be able to play today, but I'm sure he would have been able to adapt to it. Shuxing doesn't really play backhand reverse. If you watch him 10, 15 years ago, he's learned that. And so the Chinese are very good at learning from Krianga, Timo Bowles, all these kind of things, and now they're playing more and more like women. So I think they're just very good at, like you said, like Terry said or Gareth said, about just adapting, being at, like Jink said, being ahead of the game. I remember when I went to China, maybe I was like 13, 14 years old. I was learning to do that banana flick then because I saw Kong Li Hui do it. And I thought, I want to learn this. And then obviously I think the Europeans took it to another level because they can do this, they can do that, but they can't do it the best. They could go all the new, and obviously then China will go, actually, let me learn to do this now, or let me learn to do like a quick flick, because that quick punch flick is quicker than the actual back and banana flick, because I still would prefer to play from a flick ball than a chop ball at 9-all, because the chop ball, it can be short, half long, or long. The flick kind of thing's only come in one pace, and so I think like when you look at the terms and odds of things happening, I think they've just done their science. They've just done their homework kind of thing. And I think I still think it's, you know, great to touch short, but I mean, like, you know, they're doing that flick a bit quicker, so you've got less time. And I just think that they just put so much research into the game. They love it. They sit there and they eat, live, and drink it. So I mean, I think, you know, they can all, like, you know, if you watch that final with Marlon and Zhang Fengdong, it's like practice. I was saying to my friend today, yeah, if we're practicing 6 hours a day, they can practice half the time because they're not making any mistakes. They don't need to play as long as us because they're not making any mistakes. And when they're stopping because they can't be bothered, not because they're tired. Okay, it's enough. You know, these 30 shots is enough. Let's start the rally again. You know, and it's just, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to play tennis anymore because what they're doing is.
So have you given up on your comeback, Darius?
No. I'm playing because my life is good and I'm happy. And I need to get that.
Are you going to play for 3 months and beat Fan?
No. I wouldn't say that, but I definitely take that.
Listen, guys, the last thing I want to ask from you is this. Yeah, I'm going to ask each one of you. The Olympics is coming up in Tokyo. Who's going to win it? And which non-Chinese player is going to finish the highest? And as there's only 2 players in each country, it will more or less be, if you think a Chinese player is going to win it, then who's going to get the bronze medal? So let's start with you, Darius. Who do you think is going to win the Olympics? And who is going to be the player from outside of China that will do the best? And then I'm going to come back to you after the Olympics.
Look, Marlon, he looks tired. He's had enough. He's got to play another year now to get that goat status.
Did you just see that final, Darius?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
He's had enough.
He's had enough. He's tired, mate.
Fans, that was a ridiculous level they were playing at.
Yeah, but
he's tired.
Honestly, Herbie, he's tired of it.
We'll see.
He's tired of it. He's just coming to serve his country.
Just of what you're saying, Darius, Marlon's tired. Okay, who's going to win it?
I'm going to say Zhang Fengdong. I hope Marlon gets the GOAT status and wins it. Zhang Fengdong. I think that outside contender is going to be, I'm going to say Liam, only because he's the only guy that's done it on a big stage. Like, Liam to get potential medal, you know, because I think
that'd be fantastic. That'd be fantastic. Terry Young, same question to you.
Still not here.
He's got the bed.
You need to
Ryan
Ryan
Jenkins, who's your pick for the Olympics and who's your pick for a non-Chinese player to finish the highest?
Fan Zhendong, I think, to win the Olympics. And yeah, why not Liam? Come on, let's have a bit of pride in our British players and English players. Liam can get on there. And I was going to say someone like Harry Moto, but Liam's as good as those guys, so why not? He can beat them. So yeah.
Harry Moto?
Yeah, he can beat him. Yeah,
he's been a few times. He's got a record against him.
Come on, let's keep this pride going. Gareth Herbert.
Marlon is gonna win, I think.
He's gonna come back.
Marlon's gonna win. You can see it in that final. He ain't done. Fan Zhendong had to play his very top level to beat him at 4-3, 9-7. Yeah, so I'm going Marlon, Fan Zhendong second, and either Pitchford or Harimoto. I'm gonna go with the boys. I think Pitch should get a bronze.
Come on, Pitchford. Darren Blake. I've got a funny feeling that as Pitchford is the LinQ Sport ambassador, he's going to go for Pitchford to win it. But Darren Blake, what's your view?
I'd actually go similar to Herb's. You know, I got a feeling about Marlon after watching him this week. I got a feeling you just step your game up. So I got a feeling he's going to step his game up. Then it's between Fang. I would say Pitch is definitely in the mix for the medals, and Harimoto is the other one. I'd say it's them.
Pitch or Harimoto. So we're saying that Pitch is going to improve for the Olympics. He's going to be ahead of Bowl and Otarab and Falk and all these guys.
Just before lockdown, he was final of the Qatar Open, wasn't
he? Yeah.
So he's just getting back to that level. So
that's I agree. Yeah.
Guys, that's a great note to finish on. Liam Pitchford winning a medal at the Olympics in Tokyo would be absolutely fantastic for English table tennis, British table tennis, European table tennis, and world table tennis.
Sky, we haven't had your answer again. We always try and get you involved at some point.
Especially now,
what are you saying?
Especially now, you're getting up at 3:30 in the morning and sending us WhatsApps about how Pitch is getting on.
I was watching it, guys. I got up as well to watch it.
I know. We were all there. The guy was loving it.
Do you know what? I think Harry Moto's going to win the Olympics.
Yeah, fair play.
You're joking. Pitchford takes him down every single
He
time.
does beat him all the time, yeah.
Easily.
Listen, it's in his backyard. This guy is going to be so psyched and he's going to work so hard.
He is annoying, though.
What about the women then? Ito.
Who's the medals guy? Who's the medals?
And I love Ito. Do you know what? If the Japanese got Ito and Harimoto, it'd be unbelievable. But I don't know if you remember in the Seoul Olympics, which is a bit before you guys. But the South Koreans were decent, but they absolutely swept the board at the Olympics. LinQ, we'd all seen him play during the season, and he was good. But at the Olympics, he was another level. And so I expect Harimoto and Ito to step it up. They're close now. They're very close now. I think the two Japanese players will win the Olympics. If they don't, we won't be having a void straight after. Just to let you know. Guys, we're going to wrap on that. Thank you for your patriotic views on Liam Pitchford. Thank you to Gareth Herbert. Thank you to Terry Young. Thank you to Ryan Jenkins. Thank you to Darius Knight. And a big thank you to Darren Blake. See you next week, or next month, or next year for another version of The Void. Thank you for watching.
Cheers,
See you later, boys.
Guys.